What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer, Logan Landers, and join me here today to talk about the 2024 Michigan Wolverines team preview. As always, William Yates third. William, how you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. It's a great morning. Everything else, man. It's going
Good, good.
good.
Glad to hear, man. And of course, our special guest today helping break down the Michigan Wolverines from Draft Utopia, Mr. Chris Ransom. Chris, pleasure to meet you, sir. And how you doing today?
I'm doing great today.
Good,
We'll
good.
get up
Glad.
talk about the national champions and the arch rival to one of my favorite college teams in Michigan. But hey, they've got 4 first-round picks this year in the top 32. They've got a pretty good roster, and I guess we're going to preview whether or not they can repeat or not. I think there is enough talent to get to the 12-team playoff. But yeah, where do you want to start with
Yeah,
exactly?
so, William, I'll let you kick things off, man. Just talk about the team coming into the season, and like Chris said, there's been a lot of turnover. Obviously, new coaches, new players. So, how do you see them stacking up this year? And I mean, do you think they're going to be either repeating as champs or in that top 12 to fight for a national championship this season? What's your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is a team that had, like you mentioned, so much turnover. One returning starter on offense and three returning starters on defense. But the internal adjustments, promoting Kurt Campbell, the quarterback coach, to offensive coordinator, and promoting Grant Newsome from tight end coach to OL. I don't know, Chris. How do you see this coaching staff now that Harbaugh is gone, and what do you think of him?
Isn't Sherrod Moore the interim head coach from last year, the new permanent head coach? The drop
We'll see.
off might not be as big as I anticipate, because I know one of my writers, Wes Langley, he is a huge Michigan fan. They're his team, so I get updates from him about the Wolverines like all the time. So I think the two focal points on offense are going to be tight end Colston Loveland. He is the only offensive player with a first round grade on my board at the moment. And running back Donovan Edwards. Those are going to be the two focal points of this offense. Michigan, I think they lost most of their starters on the offensive line. Ladarius Henderson's gone. Keegan is gone. Drake Nugent is gone. I believe their right guard and right tackle are gone. So a completely different unit up front. I think their quarterback can manage the game effectively, and they should be able to win all their non-conference games. I know they open up against Fresno State, who has a really good running back, and that's not going to be a problem for Michigan despite the loss of Junior Colson, because they've got 2 first-round defensive tackles in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant is 31 on my big board. He did not make the first round of my initial mock, but he's 31 on my big board. I do think he has enough talent to get into round one of this year's draft. And they've got Will Johnson at corner. He's the number one player on my current big board entering the season. He did well against Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. I believe Rod Moore is returning at safety as well. I think he could potentially be a day 2 pick. So there is some talent back on Michigan, but there's also a lot of turnover. But it feels like those 6 guys are going to have to lead the Wolverines if they're going to make a serious push.
Yeah, if Uncle Jack Tuttle is, do you see him keeping the starting job with the quarterbacks that they have on this roster?
Well, after losing J.J. McCarthy, I would think Jack Tuttle's the presumptive starter. And if Michigan struggles early in the year, I think they'll pivot to freshman Jaden Davis. But I think that they want to roll with Tuttle as long as they can and then turn things over to Davis next season. That would be my presumptive guess on what happens. But I don't want to presume too much because there is a lot of turnover. And I think losing all those guys on the offensive line does hurt. I see Michigan going 8-4 or 9-3. But if they go 9-3, will that be enough to get into the 12-team playoff? That's really the big question with Michigan, because I think their ceiling is probably an 8 or 9 seed. That's assuming they put everything together. They go 10-2. I don't know if they beat Ohio State this year. They do get Oregon at home. They get Texas at home week 2. That's a huge game for the Wolverines. Against Texas, that's a big game with Texas moving to the SEC, going to Ann Arbor, the big house. That's a huge game in week 2. And that's a game that's really going to test this defense early in the year, going up against one of the top quarterbacks in Quinn Ewers. So Texas does have a good offensive tackle group. Kelvin Banks Jr. at left tackle, and their right tackle's the number 2 offensive line recruit in the country, taking over for Christian Jones. So I think that's a big test for Michigan. I could see that game honestly going either way. I'll give it to the Wolverines because they're the home team, but I could see Texas going into Ann Arbor and beating them. That feels like a pick'em game right now. But I'll give Michigan the edge because Texas lost a bunch of playmakers to the draft, like Adonai Mitchell. They also lost Xavier Worthy. So I think Michigan does win those games. I think Oregon and Ohio State are going to be challenging games for the Wolverines. I think those are 2 they're going to lose, and someone else is going to beat them when they least expect it. I don't know who. Maybe Texas, maybe USC. I don't know. I really couldn't give you a definitive answer, but I feel like Michigan's going to finish 9-3 this year. If I had to project a record for them, maybe they go 10-2. And if they only lose to Oregon, Ohio State, I think that would be enough to get them in the 10-12 team playoff as a 6 through 12 seed. They would be in there somewhere, probably in the bottom half of that region. But I would think they would be in the playoff if they went 10-2 and their only losses were to Oregon and Ohio State.
Yeah,
no doubt. Is there going to be? You think there's going to be a big drop off in terms of rushing production? Obviously, now that Blake Corum's gone, we know what he's done over the last couple of years with Big Blue. Do you think that Donovan Edwards has what it takes to step up? We know last year ran the ball for nearly 120 yards, for close to 500 yards, and like you said, in lesser attempts, you saw the production is there, 4.2 average. But do you think he's going to have what it takes to be that starter for Michigan this year?
I think Donovan Edwards can get 1,000 yards. The big question is Michigan going to be able to reload up front on the offensive line? Because this is a good offensive line despite the turnover, but it's not a great offensive line. It's solid to good. It's not great to elite like it was the last 2 years. And I think that's really the bigger question. I'm not as concerned with Edwards, but again, the offensive line is the unit that creates things for the running game as well as the quarterback and pass protection. So my questions with Edwards aren't as big as far as what kind of impact Michigan's offensive line is going to have. I'm more concerned about that than the running game whatsoever. So I think Edwards can be the guy.
Right. And William, what else you got to say about Michigan here?
How do you see that Ohio State game going? I mean, as a rival with Will Howard coming in, and what's going to happen in that game?
Will Howard led Kansas State to a Big 12 championship over TCU. He's got that experience. And Ohio State just has more guys returning this year. Pretty much every starter on the defensive line is back, despite losing their backup defensive tackle, Michael Bennett, to the Browns. Both teams have some linebacker turnover with Eichenberg and Steele Chambers gone. Michigan lost Junior Colson. I think both teams have linebacker turnover, but Ohio State's got Denzel Burke back. They've got a really good secondary as well. So I think both teams have strong secondaries and strong defensive lines, but I think Ohio State's edge rushers with JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, I would say that's the difference right now between Michigan and Ohio State. But if Michigan's quarterback can win the turnover battle against Will Howard, the Wolverines have a chance to beat Ohio State for a 4th year in a row. But with everybody returning and with Ryan Day's job on the line, something tells me the Buckeyes get it done this year. But it's closer than the experts think, and it's only like a field goal win. It's not like a 10 or 13-point win like a lot of people are projecting, or even a 7-point win. I think they only win by a field goal. But the Buckeyes get it done this year.
All right, we will see what happens. William, what are your final thoughts here on Michigan? And do you think they're going to have what it takes to get a championship out there in the Big Ten and maybe bring home another Natty this year? Do you think they have what it takes?
The potential is definitely there. Talking about the offensive line and stuff like that. They are some seniors coming in. That have that potential. I don't know about a Big Ten championship, but I do see them, getting into the 12-team playoffs. And other than that, I'd just like to thank Chris for being here. And
okay, I got a final thought before I sign off.
Yeah,
I think
of course. Go ahead.
Michigan will probably be 4th, but I think they're good enough to get in the playoff in the 10 through 12 range, but I also think they're the fourth best team. Ohio State looks complete this year. Oregon's got a really stacked roster as well. Penn State could go 12-0 since they get Ohio State at home, but they don't get Oregon or Michigan. So I think the top three is going to be Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. I just don't know what order in, and I think Michigan will be fourth. But I do think Michigan at 10-2 or 9-3, they're good enough to get in as a 10 through 12 seed. It just depends where the other three Big Ten teams are seeded. But I think we'll see at least 4 teams from the Big Ten in the playoff this year, with Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan being those 4 most likely coming from the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's going to be a dogfight this year. It's going to be some fun battles this season. And Chris, we appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people check out some of your work over there at Draft Utopia? Where are you at?
You can go to draftutopia.com. We've got all the 2024 drafts archived. I'm promoting a live stream featuring all of the drafts on a playlist from 2024. And I've got a 2025 NFL mock draft set to come out sometime tomorrow. And it's just one round, but it's a brief overview of the 2025 NFL draft class. But yeah, that's going to be out sometime tomorrow, and I'm probably going to resume that before doing a show later tonight with William. I think we're going to preview Colorado and Georgia tonight, William, so that should be fun.
Sure.
All right. Well, guys, go over and check out Chris over at Draft Utopia. He's got some great stuff over there. And once again, Mr. Ransom, we appreciate you coming on the show on 100 Yards Football, lending your expertise talking about Michigan football. And, of course, William, great work as always. I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Guys, if you enjoyed the episode, like, follow, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll